Sales tax, tip, and discount. One of my favorite things to teach all year because I never get asked when am I ever going to use this. Explain the concept of tax and tips and discount is something that students really sink their teeth into because it really interests them. I like teaching this concept because a lot of you guys have heard of discount, you've heard of tax, but you don't quite know what it is. As far as calculating it goes, what's nice about this is that there's one magic proportion that you need to have memorized. You plug into the spots, you cross multiply, see if your answer works. There are some tricky ways you could do this, but if you use your logic, if you use your brain, if you think, does this answer make sense? Sometimes you guess one way, you try another way, and it works. So sometimes you don't know which way you do it. You plug into this one proportion. If it makes sense, cool. If it does make sense, flip those two numbers, and then you should get the right answer. So you have to use your logic in this particular content in order to do well with sales tax, tip, and discount. Percent problems are math problems, and we see in Math 7 pretty frequently, that involve a percent symbol. Now, not all percent problems involve the formula I'm going to show you, but most of them do. So when you see percent problems, you should be thinking of the magic formula that I'm going to show you to use. When we see percent problems, in general, they're going to have three different parts. They're going to have an is, they're going to have an of, and they're going to have a percent. Now, it seems confusing, but I'll give you some very basic examples. Here's a very basic example of a percent problem. An already solved percent problem. Hopefully you agree 10 is 50% of 20. Do you agree that 10 is half of 20? I hope so. It is. It's true. 10 is half of 20. In this example, we can identify the is, the of, and the percent. The percent is the easiest one to identify. Usually the percent and the number are right next to each other. In this case, the percent is 50. The of in this case is 20, and the 10 is the is. That 10 is. Here's another quick example. 30 is 25% of 120. Again, the percent is easy to identify. Which one's the is, which one's the of? 30 is, so that's my is, and 120 is my of. So that's a pretty straightforward, basic example of what you're going to see with the percent problem, but more often than not, we're going to be missing a part. We're going to have to figure out what we're missing. Again, the percent is the easy one to figure out. We should do that first. 40 is my percent. Now I have 3,000. Is 3,000 my is or is 3,000 my of? In this case, it is my of. So what is the is? We don't know yet. We put a variable in that spot. We'll figure it out. Here are some examples where we're missing the of, and sometimes we're missing the percent. So in this case, the of is the variable. In this case, the percent is a variable. I'll use a different letter this time. The nice thing is no matter what you're missing, if you're missing the is, if you're missing the of, or if you're missing the percent, you only have to have one formula memorized. And I call it the magic proportion. But in all seriousness, this is one thing you would need to have committed to memory if you want to be successful with sales tax and discount, and that's is over of equals percent over 100. It's something you need to pause the video for right now and write it down. This is the proportion you need to have committed to memory. Is over of equals percent over 100. The percent always goes above the 100, which kind of makes sense, right? Because if we think about the word percent, which we've covered in the past, it's per, and then a cent, there's 100 cents in a dollar, there's 100 years in a century. And like if you look at a percent symbol, it is a 1 and then 2 zeros. So the percent always goes over 100. The is goes on top, the of goes on bottom. So you'll always be able to identify the percent pretty easily. Sometimes you have to guess which is the is, which is the of, and that's where we talked about having some number sets. I'm going to cheat a little bit because there is a second one that we need to know. We'll talk about this later. A second and equally as magical proportion, which is part over whole equals percent over 100. So is over of equals percent over 100 and part of the whole, which makes sense, right? If you have like 3 and then 10% of something else, like 3 is the small thing, that's the part of the whole number we're looking for. So part is the smaller part of the whole value. That's where part and whole comes into play. That's something for a different lesson. If we have that first example, what is 40% of 3,000, again, we have committed to memory is over of equals percent over 100. As soon as you see percent, you should be thinking is over of equals percent over 100. Now, the nice thing is 100 always goes there. We have one of our four numbers. It's easy to identify the percent. In this case, it's 40. Now, you should be able to tell that my of is 3,000, which is the one on the bottom, and x goes on the top. How do I solve this? I cross multiply and divide, which we've covered in other videos. If you don't know how to cross multiply and divide, please go check that one out. We'll get a value for x, which I believe in this case is 120? No, 1,200. So 1,200 is what x is equal to in this particular example. You would get that by cross multiplying and dividing. The rest of them are similar examples. Again, you see percent, you should be thinking is over of equals percent over 100. Nice for us. We know that the 100 always goes down there. 20 is my percent. This time 12 is my is, because is goes on top. And then we cross multiply and divide, get our answer that time. The rest of them are word problems based on the same kind of concept. But if you're not sure, this is where you have to use your brain, you have to use your logic. Here's an example. Diamond earns a 5% commission on all of her sales. If her commission is $75, what is her sales? We have to analyze this problem and sort of think for a second. 5% commission is what happens with when you sell a lot of stuff as like a salesman. This is like the bonus you get. So if you sold a whole bunch of stuff, your boss may say, wow, you did a great job. Here's 75 bucks. Here's your 5% commission. Based on knowing what a commission is, we can use my is over of equals percent over 100. Again, once you see a percent sign, you should be thinking is over of equals percent over 100. Now, you might not know all of it, but you definitely know some of it. You definitely know that the 100 goes here, and you definitely know that the percent is 5. All right, so you've got 75. You got a 50-50 shot for getting it right at this point. And you might be saying, well, I'm not going to guess. I am telling you, you should guess. Either guess that 75 goes here, or guess that 75 goes as the numerator. Now, it's not that hard to solve either one of these. We've talked about cross multiplying and dividing. You can use a calculator. It's not that difficult. When you cross multiply and divide, it's like 2 steps of actually multiplying the two numbers. So doing it twice doesn't really hurt you, especially if you want to get it correct. So if I do the one on the left, and I do 75 times 5 in my calculator, 75 times 5, I get 375, and then I divide by the leftover, which is 100. I get 3.75 when this is dollars. So let's think for a second. If Diamond sold $3.75 worth of stuff, do you think her boss would say, hey, great job, here's $75? Again, if she sold to her customers $3.75, do you think her boss would give her a bonus of 75? No, of course not, which means this was not the right way to do it. And it's fine. It was just a quick guess. It didn't take me very long to do that. I'm now going to try the other way. I'll do 75 times 100, which is 7,500. 5 is a leftover thing, so I'll divide by 5, and I get 7,500 divided by 5, which is $1,500. Now, does that make more sense that she sold $1,500 worth of stuff, and so her boss said, here's a bonus of 75? Now, it's not a lot, but that certainly makes more sense than selling $375 and her boss giving her $75. So the answer is 1,500. Again, I'm telling you, you can and should just guess. You know the 100 goes here. You know what the percent is going to be. You guess and then use your brain, as we've talked about using your number sense, to see if this number makes sense. So what is sales tax and discount? A lot of you know that tax exists, and you know that taxes go to the government. You know that it's bad because you have to pay it, yada, yada, yada. But what you don't know is where tax, how it's calculated, and what it actually means. Like, is a 5% or an 8% or a 10% tax bad? Well, what sales tax is a fee paid based on the cost of an item and a percent, and it's added to the total cost. Essentially, what a sales tax is you pay for an item. You pay for 100% of the item, but then the government says, whether it's state, whether it's local, whether it's the federal government, they say, hey, that's great that you paid for that. We want you to pay 5% again. So you actually end up paying not for 100% of an item. You actually add another 5% on, or 8, or whatever the percentage is. So you pay for 100%, 105% or 108% of the item. That 5%, you might ask, is that a lot? Is that not a lot? Well, it depends on what you buy. If you pay 5% tax on a $20 shirt, that's going to be way less than if you pay a 5% tax on a $50,000 car. So that percentage, if everything stays the same, it depends on what the cost of the item is. On the same token, if it's a $20 shirt and a $20 shirt, and you pay a 5% sales tax in one state and you pay an 8% sales tax in another state, obviously you're going to pay more on the state with a higher sales tax. So both of those things come into play, and those are both things that we have to take into account when doing a sales tax and discount. And that's exactly why we use the same proportion that we've done before, which is the is over of equals percent over 100, that magic proportion that we had previously talked about. So here's an example. So pretty much what we just talked about. $20 shirt with the sales tax at 8%. What's the amount of tax? You see percent, you should immediately be thinking is over of equals percent over 100. That's that magic proportion. Luckily, we know 100 goes down here. 8 is my percent. Now 20. Is 20 my is, or is 20 my of? Is it in the top or is it in the bottom? Maybe you don't know, and that's okay. But right now, we know we're finding the amount of tax. We also know the amount of tax is probably not going to be more than the cost of the shirt. Now, that should help us, because if we know stuff about proportions, we know that in this fraction, in this ratio, the bigger number is on the bottom. So if we leave this open, we're going to get a bigger number. We're going to get a number bigger than 20. And we don't want a tax that's bigger than the cost of the shirt. So this one's probably going to be the one we're going to want to use, with the smaller numbers on top. So a smaller number, which is the taxes on top. But again, if you don't know that, and that's okay, we're going to use our proportion and quickly solve by using our calculator. And you will see that we can quickly find the prices that we need and which one makes sense. We cross multiply 20 times 100, which is 2,000. And then we do the leftover 8, so we divide by 8. It's 2,000 divided by 8. In this case, it says the amount of tax is $250. Now, do you think that we are going to have a $250 tax? No, of course not. If you tried to buy a $20 shirt and they said, oh, the tax is going to be $250, you should walk out immediately. Let's try this example. 8 times 20, which is 160, divided by the leftover number, which is 100. So 160 divided by 100, which is 1.6. Now, 1.6 seems like it doesn't make sense until you realize, oh, we're talking about money, and in America, we go to the hundreds place. So it's $1.60. The question asks, what's the amount of tax? In this case, the amount of tax is $1.60. Now, that's not what you're going to pay. You're not going to give the cashier $1.60 and walk out. Now we go to the total cost. The total is $20 plus the $1.60 for a total cost of $21.60. Make sure you're labeling. So they'll ask you what's the amount of tax, or they might ask you the total cost. The process is still the same of is over of equals percent over 100. Now they might say, oh, you paid with two $20 bills. So you gave the cashier $40. How much change do you get? So if you gave them $40 and you want to know how much change, that's another step. You would do 40 minus $21.60, and you get $18.40 as your change. Different questions will ask different things. Make sure you're paying attention, because you'll get it wrong if you give $21.60 when all they want to know is the tax. And you'll get it wrong if they ask for the total and you just give $1.60. So pay attention and read the question. Here's another one. This one involves the word tip. Now, tip and tax are really the same thing, because your tip is based on how much you pay. Again, the percent indicates that it is over of equals percent over 100. So we put the 100 down here in the percent is 20. Now, technically, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to tip based on the subtotal, not based after tax. We're just going to use 7150 just because. So now is 7150 my is or my of? You may start to figure out there's a pattern where most of the time it's your of. We also realize that the tip is a smaller number, and since the smaller number is on the top on the right, being consistent is going to be on the top on the left as well. But let's cross multiply and solve this. 20 times 7150 is 1430. We divide by 100, and we get $14.30, which in all realistic sense, you'd probably round up. So it's $14.30 is the amount of tip. What's the new total? You take 7150, which is what you're going to pay, add the 1430, make sure you line for decimals. You get $85.80. Make sure you're labeling, paying attention to the questions, whether it's for the new total, the tip, etc. So now what is a discount? A discount is hidden in the word. Dis means not and count means count. So a discount is literally the same thing, except instead of adding, you're going to subtract. So instead of paying 100% of the item, if it's 20% off, you're not going to do 100% of the item plus 20%, like what tax was. You're going to do 100% of the item minus the 20%. You're not counting that part. So we still calculate what the 20% is, and this time instead of adding and paying it again, we subtract it because we don't have to pay it. The process is the same. So here's an example with a coupon. The Hendersons got a bill from the local diner for $17.50, and they have a coupon for 10% off. I see percent. I'm thinking is over of equals percent over 100. I know that 100 goes down here. I know that my percent is 10. The question is 1750 my is or my of? Once again, if you take 10% off, that's not very much. It's not going to be the number on the bottom. It's going to be the number on the top that we're looking for. So I'll clue you in most of the time. Not all the time. Most of the time, it's in the bottom. We cross multiply. 10 times 1750 is 175. Divide by the leftover number, which is 100. So that's 1.75. That is not what they're going to pay. They're not going to pay for a $17.50 bill and then only pay $1.75. That's how much the discount is. The discount is just $1.75. What is the new total? Again, the discount is subtracted, so I just take $17.50 and I subtract $1.75, and I get $15.75 is my new total cost. $15.75 is the total cost after I've subtracted the discount. So sales tax, discount, the same thing. Discount we subtract. Sales tax, add. Tip, add.